Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about what actually gets a gym to 500K annually and what doesn't. So, Doug, get us started.
Yeah, I mean, just to set expectation, the reason why we use 500K, I think that's a very nice milestone for a lot of operators to get to. Certainly, some may have bigger dreams than that, but I think at that milestone, you have a lot of things that kick in. There's certainly there's some unicorns out there that can get there by themselves, but for the most part, you have a team in place so that you have enough meat on the bones to gonna pay a couple people to help you out so that you're not doing all the work yourself. And that you're also from a whether you want to use the term profit or net owner benefit, you're able to take enough that makes it feel like business ownership is worth it, as opposed to if you got a brick and mortar facility and you're only making 100K a year, that's probably all going back into the business, and you're not actually personally benefiting from it. So just to kind of set expectation, I think that's why we tend to talk about that 500K milestone a lot, because it certainly, I think, it's very realistic. We've had plenty of people get there, and it's also pretty life-changing in the sense of you're going from potentially a solo operator doing all the work yourself to having some freedom and some time and some monetary benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's attainable for most of us, right? It's not market. It doesn't take the most affluent market. It doesn't take a giant footprint facility. So I think that's a great benchmark. And the fun thing about it is if you aspire for more than that, well, you still got to pass that milestone along the way. So Doug, I mean, we've got a roadmap. We kind of guide people through to get to 500K. What do we see as kind of these key steps or key components that have to be in place for somebody to get there and stay there?
Yeah, you don't get to 500K without creating what we call demand or consistent marketing, right? I mean, I think you can hustle your way to a couple hundred grand and have and that's top line, of course, right? So if you're running a brick and mortar facility, that's usually we have plenty of folks that come into our ecosystem that are doing 10 to 20K a month and making little to nothing. And so I think the goal is to get you to that 500K. Usually the first opportunity is to create consistent demand. So that's going to be installing a monthly marketing plan, not being kind of trying to reduce the ups and downs of, hey, I'm going to market this month. I get some clients, so then I stop marketing, and now I'm hungry again, so I market again. But really getting that consistent monthly marketing in place that builds a consistent pipeline. So there's always people in the queue. I'm getting my assessment or consultation goal, my appointment goal. I'm signing up enough new people that isn't overwhelming to the operation, but is enough to see that steady growth. And that all comes back to the bottleneck of I'm randomly marketing right now, if at all, and getting in a habit where I can run that consistent monthly marketing plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big shift we see so many of those kind of early intermediate stage owners make is going from erratic and inconsistent marketing, not an absence of marketing. I mean, they do stuff, they dabble in stuff, they do things once or twice a year, the referral campaigns, the reactivation push, they may even tinker with ads a little bit, but it's never this monthly rhythm that consistently drives people through the door and compounds over time because it builds a brand and a position in the marketplace. The good businesses, the successful businesses, they all have that. So if that's first, what's next?
Eventually we want to get to a point where, whether it's, I think for most of the folks that are trying to strive for 500K, like getting a lead a day is a really good target. And so the demand, that consistent demand, that consistent monthly marketing plan should, when done right, result in an average of a lead a day. But I think a big shift that we try to get our clients to focus on is leads are great, and certainly we want affordable leads. However, The famous saying of we just need to get them in the door, right? And so marketing certainly gets them to raise their hand, but I think a mindset shift that needs to happen is marketing is often not what gets them into your door. It just gets them to raise their hand, i.e., you get their contact info. And so I would say the second big thing that we spend a lot of time on is improving follow up and improving that conversion process, where the amount of follow up that somebody needs today is drastically different than what they needed months or years ago. And making sure it's a multifaceted follow up system where there's some automation in place to take advantage of being timely and technology, but also making sure that if it's all automation, the chances of them responding or a large percentage of them responding is pretty slim. And so we do find the manual outreach at least enhances the response rate. So even though they may respond to the automation, that could have been because they heard your voicemail. And so they're able to hear your voice. They are able to know, oh, this is legit. It's not spam. We find that to be especially important the bigger the market is. The more options there are, the noisier the marketplace is. If you don't have a lot of local brand awareness, them receiving an automated text or an automated email from a name that they often may have filled out a form and not even paid attention to the name or don't recognize the name. And so the manual outreach, I think, authenticates a lot of the automation that goes out. And so spending some time really building out that conversion process to make sure that when leads do come in, we're actually getting them in the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think that follow up is very much the untapped gold mine for so many of these businesses that we see. I was lucky. I came from college sports where it's almost all follow up, right? You got to get them to campus, got to get them on a campus visit. So nobody you meet the first minute and they sign a scholarship or something like that. You have that process. And so I think I appreciated that early on. Whereas a lot of owners that we come in contact with, they kind of base all their expectations on what they want. Like, hey, I want this person to see my ad or see my Google business listing or see my post on social media and immediately come sprinting through my door with credit card in hand. And that's just not the way that people buy. That's not the way that any of us shop anymore. I mean, yeah, I think we all go through this discovery process. I mean, we just did some internal trainings on how people buy, and it's not this linear, short kind of 48-hour path. It's I get on my phone and I start to do some discovery. I read reviews, I watch content, I do things on my terms. And if you aren't in tune with that, and if your follow up isn't built to really kind of dovetail with that, then you're probably missing out on 80% of the business that you could actually get. So I would encourage you, if you take anything away from today, if you make your follow up substantially stronger, your business is going to grow much more rapidly.
For sure. Because again, the take home point with these first two is generating leads has a very, I mean, it's ever evolving, but it has a proven playbook. Like we can learn strategies that generate leads. Those are out there, they're available. They're certainly better ways to do it and will continue to always be better ways to do it. But that's a more proven playbook as opposed to there's, I think, a little bit of an art, a little bit of a consistency that you can't just run the play on follow up and expect it to work. There's a lot of kind of things like speed to lead and how fast you get back to a lead, or when somebody does reply, how do you kind of move that conversation forward? So there's, I think, a lot of good effort that can be spent there. I don't think it's wasted time. There's a lot of, what do they call it nowadays? Fake work, right? Like there's a lot of busy work, the fake work that people do, but improving your follow-up system is certainly not that. And it can be very, very, very helpful. The other one that I would add, nobody that we work with that gets to 500K does not, they all have some type of defined session experience. They all have some defined way of here's how I deliver what I do. And it's not random. It's not, I have three different ways of delivering. I have this kind of singular delivery path, the singular model where here's what people come in on, here's the model that we deliver, and here's kind of the standards that we expect the sessions to be delivered at. And obviously you're usually, as you grow 20, 30, 40K a month, there's usually other people aside from you delivering those sessions. And so we want to make sure that those sessions are up to a certain standard. And so I think that's a big key as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that I think we're going to see continuing to evolve in our industry, right? Like now, more than ever, and it's only going to continue to trend this way, is there's just more competition. There are more opportunities. And so retention then becomes more of a lever we can pull to separate ourselves because the retention is not great at a lot of the franchise locations that are out there. They're good at the front end stuff. They're good at lead generation. They invest in high traffic venues. But for us, if we can hang on to people in spite of the fact that there are plenty of alternatives available to them, they're being marketed to very regularly. That in turn becomes a true differentiator that probably offsets the lack of maybe investment that they're spending $20,000 a month on Class A real estate, and maybe you're spending $5,000 a month on something a little less high traffic. So we can make up for it this way, but that means that we have to have a much higher session standard.
Yeah. And retention is something that we, in the beginning, rightfully so, don't stress a ton about because we are the ones delivering the product. And oftentimes, if you have less than 100 clients, which is where most of our clients start with, they are doing the bulk of the training themselves. And they, even when hitting mediocre percentages like 5 to 6%, 8% churn, you're only losing 5 people a month, which you can maintain that with pretty average marketing. But now all of a sudden you get past that and now you're at 150 clients and you're losing 5 to 10 people a month. That is now much harder to overcome on the marketing front. And that's frankly probably why I see more franchises right now in the adult world, the ones posting their, hey, we're closing the doors on this day, than I do opening. And I believe, like you said, it's because they nailed the marketing side of it. But whether that be to low standards or lack of variety, lack of consistency, no quality coaching, whatever the reason may be, it's a good reminder that you can have really good marketing and it's never going to be able to outpace poor retention. And so I realize the marketing and the conversion gets certainly the most attention at this stage, rightfully so. That's a reason why it's 1 and 2 as opposed to delivery being 3. However, just not losing sight that we do need to make sure we're having high standards and teaching those standards so that retention does not become an issue.
Yeah, so we basically got our pipeline in place. We have standards in place to set the stage for retaining clients at a much higher rate. Is there anything else that we see or that you're specifically seeing that has to be in place for somebody to break through that 500K mark?
Yeah, I would say those 3, in my experience, get you to, on average, 25 to 30. Like if you nail those 3, you can get to probably 30K a month and be okay. The sticking point around 25 to 30K is often you've gotten consistent at marketing, you're getting people in the door, you're delivering, and you may have occasional kind of help here and there. But the difference between somebody that's doing, say, 30K and 40K often is, yeah, sure, some fine tuning of the marketing, a little bit better follow up, but they're investing into their team and making sure that we can create these standards. But I know that as a guy that creates a lot of standards, the harder part is making sure the team is delivering those standards. And so that's going to be things like, of course, recruiting good team members, but the recruiting is only step 1. We have to spend an equal or greater time making sure that they're trained up, making sure that we're practicing with them. We use I'm using it less and less because my team gets cringy with the word role play, but really it's the practice idea, right? I mean, most of us, a lot of us came from a sports background in this industry, and you would never just walk out on game day without any practice. And for us, the game day is the sessions. For our team, the game day is the sessions that they're coaching. And so setting them up for success is going to be making sure that you have time to practice with them. And so that practice may be you're going to break down movement patterns and make sure that they know how to coach the movement pattern. They're comfortable progressing and regressing. How do you want the session to start? How do you want the session to end? Those are all key moments within the session that you're going to want to make sure you practice with the team. And that kind of high practice rate usually results in a better experience. So in turn, what happens with that? When you have a better experience, your retention improves. You don't have as much of an issue on retention and things like referrals. So it kind of feeds the other three when you invest back into your team.
Yeah, and the more time you spend with your team, the more successful they are, the less staff turnover you have, which is always going to feel a little bit like a step backwards. The ability for you to kind of step out of a coaching role and be better at the relationship side of marketing, to get more proficient at some of the pipeline stuff. It all kind of just works hand in hand, right? It's this kind of systematic approach that we see the successful businesses that get there, stay there, and even scale from there. They all have in place rather than randomness, always kind of, I think back to cartoons when I was a kid where they would just like plug the dam with one finger here, one finger there, and it just would sprout something else because they were only addressing one challenge at a time instead of building a systematic approach that gives them the outcome that they want.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing I would hit on here would be with all of this, there are kind of an underlying, and it can be very simple, but I think an underlying understanding of measuring this and knowing your numbers. So making sure we know how many leads we're getting, how many of those leads are coming in the door. What is, when we say retention rate or churn rate, what is that? How many people actually are leaving? Even if we start with those handful and really understand them, now we know the plugging of the hole, there's probably always going to be a leak somewhere. Like that's just the reality. And frankly, hopefully the fun of business is there's always something to work on. There's always something to solve. But if you know your numbers and okay, here's my target for leads, here's my target for appointments, here's how many people I have to expect are going to leave every month. Now, if I look at those three, every month I can say which one of those do I need to put focus on? Because you can't focus on all three at the same time. But if lead count is good, but you're not getting the appointments, that's usually a follow-up issue. If leads aren't good, then we need to market more. If you're getting appointments, new people in, but people are leaving, then we can improve retention. So I think knowing the numbers makes it a little bit, at least more clear. I'm not going to say easier, but a little bit more clear to know which one to work on.
Yeah, and it's never done. I think that's been one of the things that it's maybe a challenge for us to accept as business owners is it's not set it and forget it. These systems are kind of ever evolving things because we're dealing in an environment that involves a lot of human beings, clients, team members. The marketplace continues to evolve, circumstances change, but it's not like we're having to reinvent everything. We're just kind of refining things over and over and over, which is a much better place to be as owner. It's probably closer to what you imagine when you started a business ownership was actually going to look like. So, Doug, we'll put a bow on this one. And if you want to know how to get to 500K, those are the systems that we found time and time again need to be in place to get you there. If you want to talk with us about how to install and optimize those for your business, shoot us a message. And otherwise, that's Doug and Pat signing off.